Okay, going to try to tie in some end time prophecies here because we're approaching the last hour. And the little horn, Trump, has set forth a decree for reverse migration. And a lot of people are getting nervous, and deporting a lot of immigrants, and rightfully and righteously so. And I'm going to explain this to you. Everything that Yahuwah has set forth in the order of things, when you deviate from it, it causes problems. Sometimes it causes problems immediately. Sometimes it takes 10, 15, 20. Sometimes it takes centuries for you to realize that the thing that you deviated from, the old path which Yahuwah set forth, was not the right path. And that's how kingdoms fall. Kingdoms is what Yahuwah set up. It was meant that kingdoms are ruled by men at the helm. The throne was set up to be occupied by a man in Yahuwah's image and to judge righteously those in the kingdom. Nations, before there was a nation or a city upon the earth, there was man. And I've told you this before and explained it in previous videos. But in the early times of creation, men created cities simply by finding a piece of land, building homes there, and having children with their wives and establishing law and order. Now, they would usually name that city after themselves or their sons or the things that were happening in the earth. Tells you that in the book of Genesis. They all spoke the same language. They all had the same culture, and they were all of the same seed line, meaning they were of the same race and tribes and tribals. That was what you would call a homogeneous nation. That's the way it was meant to be. Israel is a homogeneous nation. Babylonians were homogeneous people. The Assyrians were homogeneous and indigenous to the earth. And almost every nation you look at today, to this day, are still homogeneous. Your Ethiopians, your Somalis, your Chinese, they're all the same people. Now, even though people may cross borders and take up habitation in those cities and nations, the visitors or the migrants would never outnumber the original people that established that land. If they do, then you would have wars and conflict because there's different cultures, different languages. Now, America was a different experiment. It was a fallen angelic experiment. Remember, I revealed and showed to you, I didn't do it. The Son of Man showed it to me, and I have to give it to you. The mystery of the four horsemen is nothing that's like an end times prophecy. It's been upon the earth for thousands of years already. When John the Revelator wrote it, the four horsemen were operating in his day. The first horseman was white, and the rider of that horse shows you who the actual rider is. They were Europeans, Anglo-Saxons, the tares, the children of the fallen angels, of all the isles of the Gentiles that were in Europe, Britain, Spain, France, Germany, Portugal, the Netherlands, the Anglos, and all those nations that went out throughout the earth to conquer. Authority was given to them from Yahuwah to go out and conquer and establish nations. They went into the indigenous tribes of Africa. Alexander the Greek went and conquered, and a sword was given to him. And after them, when they conquered these nations like Namibia in Africa and colonized them, these were your colonizers. What followed, not usually, always would be war, famine, and death. And then they became subjects to the European colonizers. This has been the case since over 2,000 years ago when John the Revelator wrote these things on the Isle of Patmos. This is not an end times prophecy. This is something that's been in the earth for thousands of years, probably since 333 BC, right around the time of Alexander the Greek. Yahuwah revealed that to John on Patmos, and he wrote it 2,000 years ago, even when the mystery of iniquity had already worked, which was Christianity. So those things happened, and that was right before we were chased out of Rome. That was the kingdom of iron from Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Now we're living in the last captivity, mystery Babylon, because to most people it's a mystery to them, but to the elect and those whose eyes are open, we know that this is literally the Babylon that the scripture spoke about, the last kingdom of iron and clay that Daniel spoke about. It was just two things. Iron are the children of the angels, the fallen ones, and the clay are the Hebrew Israelites that built the nation, the Hebrews, us. Remember, we're the clay that's in the potter's hand. The potter is Yahushua. Okay? When this nation was established, they called it a melting pot. But originally this is after they overthrew the Indians. You know, you can find that in the book of Obadiah. They destroyed Esau, as a lot of you would like to think, still talking about Esau. Those were the Native Americans that the heathen overthrew. Their seed is no more. Then they raped the women, and that's why you have Indians of a mingled. They don't look like the original Indians, which had a ruddy appearance. That's why they called them the red man. They were indeed our brethren. But there were what you would call Negroes, which are Hebrew Israelites, my forefathers and your forefathers, who built this nation. Because we were sent here as prophesied in Genesis 15:13 and Deuteronomy 28:68. It was a form of punishment. We're the weak clay. The strength of the iron is those of the angels. The only immigrants that came over here were of European nations. Okay? The Europeans that came here literally built the skyscrapers. You see the iron workers. Yahuwah said that he would send us to a nation of fierce people, of a fierce countenance whose language we would not understand. Hello, English. Okay? They're the ones, the Irish, you know, and the other Europeans that came in through the port. The Statue of Liberty was originally meant to be a sign of freedom for slaves. Okay, that's why you see at her feet. That's why you see at her feet chains that were broken. But aside from all, I'm trying to give you a rundown of all of this. And those were the primary immigrants that this nation was built. So don't get offended. It was built upon our backs. This nation obtained her wealth from 200 years of free slave labor. And from that, they built the rest of the nation. White Anglos, colonialists. Okay, so when you hear people say that, those are facts. But this is all to fulfill prophecy. And now that the last trump, remember, at the sound of the last trump, the second trump, they're talking of scriptures or something else. The scriptures will reveal things that you wouldn't think. That was Trump's second term and even his last term. The sound of the second trump when the trumpet would sound. Our redemption is coming in his day and his lifetime, like I've told you. And also, I think it's written in the book of, if it's either Isaiah or Jeremiah, that every nation will turn to his own people. You see that coming now with reverse migration because the wicked Democrats, have allowed nations of all other diverse cultures to come in under Biden under the last 4 years. You can't have a nation like that because now they're not integrating. They're not learning English and learning the culture. They're bringing their own flags and their own language and their own ways, and that leads to war. They're trying to force the indigenous to learn their ways. So Trump, that's a righteous thing. Any righteous king would do that. You would have to get rid of foreigners. They are invaders. Unfortunately, the ignorant Negro don't understand these things, and most Negroes are loyal to a wicked party from which they're going to have to give an account of before the Most High, because that which you support, you're going to have to get and work for. You're going to have to get your vote, and trust should be in Yahuwah, not the political systems and the hills and the mountains of this land. And I won't go into the many abominations that the wicked Democratic Party has promoted. You know, homosexualities, the lawlessness, the sedition and treason. But aside from all of that, that's a righteous thing. You want to get rid of all other cultures that don't want to willingly learn English, learn the laws of the land, and integrate and be more loyal to America. So it's going to become a failed experiment. You cannot have a nation. A nation has to be the majority of one particular race of people that runs it. That's why the Son of Man spoke to Daniel and he said, in the kingdom of iron and clay, you will have the strength of the iron. The white European colonialist is the strength of this kingdom. That's why when you see the clay go into politics, it weakens it. When you see black women sitting as judges and black men sitting in Congress and the heads of cities, you see with Brandon Johnson, the city, we can't even govern ourselves. The scriptures tell you that, you know? So keep that in mind. You have to look at everything from the prophetic spiritual perspective. The kings of the east are, as that's already coming to, that's fulfilling and is almost fully fulfilled. The bear is Russia. The Michael is standing up on behalf of our people, because if you look at Russia on their flag, you will see Michael the archangel trampling the dragon underfoot. NATO has waged, including the West, has waged war against Russia. And Russia has still prevailed because it's prophesied. You know, Russia has the backing of the Most High. That's all prophetic. And because he rolled over, the bear rolled on the side with 3 ribs in his mouth, and he said, rise and devour much flesh. Now, you have to remember, this is my personal opinion. I think the Russians are what's left of Japheth. Because remember when Noah blessed Japheth, he said, Yahuwah will enlarge your territory. And Russia is one of the largest and their territories on earth. And they're also a world superpower and one of the strongest nations in the earth. And they will not be defeated. Europeans are indeed Satan's children, but you have to keep in mind they are iron. They have the strength of the angels in them. They also have the knowledge of the angels. That's why they split the atom, created the bombs. But a lot of their deeds are contrary to the earth. And they're very, very vicious. It's just the truth of the matter. They have to be born again by the natural branches, which also is the clay. So Trump righteously is doing what he's calling reverse migration, and he's deporting a lot of illegals that shouldn't be here to begin with. They're sticking them in our cities, the cities of the Hebrews, like Gary, Indiana, Chicago, Baltimore, and all other places across the country, taking our resources. As the scriptures plainly state, no nations like us. You know, Zephaniah, gather yourselves together, O you nation undesired. So that shouldn't be a surprise to you. I believe they do know who we are. I'm not going to get into talks about the synagogue of Satan, the nation that blasphemes or impersonates us, because I wanted you to understand these things. And we're entering into the very last hour and minutes, because the right head of the bird, which is the MAGA Republicans, will devour the left head, which is your Democrats. The Democrats will not hold the reins of power again. And after that, it says the last head on the bird is going to be destroyed from outside. Don't know. Sometimes prophecy, you don't know it until it begins to unfold. Trump will be left alive, but his kingdom will be full of trouble. Our redemption is coming in his day and lifetime. At the sound of the second term of Trump, the last Trump. I wanted to make this video before I turned in for the evening, because there's a lot of prophecies unfolding. You see the floods, the earthquakes, the wars, the rumors of wars, the realms against realms, including in this nation, the lefts against the right as a realm, the tribes against tribes. You know, even in Thailand, they're fighting. So these signs are there, and they're getting stronger and more intense. Those of you who are still out there partying and things, I can't tell you enough to stop that and to start repenting. Because like he said, it will catch you unaware, just like the 5 foolish virgins who didn't have enough oil. Get your oil. So I wanted to say that nations were never meant to be a melting pot, or like what they call a quilt of mingled nations. That's how you get tensions and war. And you see all of this happening now in the United States. Crime is increasing and all sorts of things. So they should go back to their nations of origin and make their own nations greater. This isn't our nation either, but by prophecy, we're supposed to be here. We didn't migrate here. We came here and changed, but this is still just as much our nation until Yahuwah brings up out of here as it is, almost as much, but it's truly the Europeans, because he said we would be in a land that is not ours. So keep that in mind. Also, I'd just like to add, this is aside from the topic of the video. I saw a sorcerer, and I shared it on my page, trying to deceive you into thinking that it's okay to call upon the J word or any other name for Yahushua, and that's not true. And he said, talking about how names are different in different languages. That's just not true. I've met people who didn't speak English of different cultures, Indians, Chinese, Hispanics that spoke Spanish and other languages that I didn't know. And now with apps, you can translate. And when I tell them my name is Dale. Some of them get it right off the bat, Dale. Others, my name is a simple name. But just like I met a Hispanic the other day, his name was Alejandro. He told me his name. I speak English, he speaks Spanish. He told me his name, I pronounced it right the first time. The name that you're given in your original language is indeed your name. Doesn't make a difference what other language people speak. They have to pronounce it the same so that it's not changed, that it is identity and sound remains the same. So Alejandro was named by his parents that spoke Spanish. And even though I speak English, I still pronounced it Alejandro. The same is true with the name above names. It cannot be changed. Whether you speak English, Spanish, Yahuwah's name is Hebrew. I don't care if you speak English, Chinese, Mandarin, or whatever angel. There's many, many, many languages in the earth. The pronunciation and the saying cannot change. It is still Yahuwah. And the son's name is still Yahuwah Shua. No other names. So beware of those sorcerers that try to get you to transgress the greatest and biggest commandment of not knowing and remembering Yahuwah's name, because he said in Exodus 3:15, this is my memorial. That means how I am known unto all generations, even to eternity. So if you don't know his name, you don't know him. And you can't worship him if you don't know his name. That opens the door to put false gods before him. And other nations have their own gods. So he was nothing but a sorcerer. It angers me. I put it on my page, but I was born to call them out. And not just that. So I just wanted to make this video to hopefully help you gain some understanding on where we are, because it's written in one of the, I just don't know where it's at, but you can find it, where people are going to turn. I think it's, I don't want to give you the wrong. It's Isaiah or Jeremiah, where people will start fleeing to their own lands because times are going to get really rough. So that being said, it's a righteous thing what Trump is doing, because nowhere on earth, even Russians, the Russian Federation are primarily Russian-speaking ethnic Russians. Same with India. That's how nations, Yahuwah established nations and people and divided them and bounded their borders. America, even though their migration has gotten out of check, so Satan was behind that the Democrats done, because Satan causes disorder and rebellion, and they upset the balance of those nations. That causes war and chaos. There's laws. All nations have laws, and you're supposed to obey the laws of the land, except where they cause you to break the commandments of Yahuwah. That's how it works. It says, submit yourselves to the governing authorities. Every land has its own ways. If you don't like them, stay out of their lands, because some lands have strict laws, and you can face death for doing certain things. So you have to beware and respect their lands of laws, and America is no exception. America is also a superpower, and the last one of the great nations before its fall. So I just wanted to say that to help you understand. Nations were established by ethnic people, specific races, and they all spoke the same language. They had the same culture. When others came amongst them, they had to integrate and learn that culture to be accepted. They didn't come in there bringing, just like the nation, I'm an Israelite. When it says welcome the stranger, we didn't welcome their strange gods and their ways and cultures. They had to come worship Yahuwah and keep his commandments. Then they were to be treated like one born in the land. We wouldn't let them bring that bullshit over there. They had to leave that over there. We would accept them only if they wanted to seek and find Yahuwah. And it's the same with this nation. So that's righteous. You kick their asses out and you deport them. Over here floating their own flag. That's like a literal invasion. And men go to war for things like that. I would too. If somebody crossed the borders over to Israel bringing strange gods, I'd go after them in a heartbeat and trying to get us to, and tempting our men and women to worship their strange gods. I put a point in the sword with the quickness in them. And that's a good thing. So yes, they need to get out of here and go back to their own lands. Because if they don't, it will surely lead to war and uprisings. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. So I hope that explains some things. I wanted to make this video so that you not be deceived and so that you understand what's righteous and what ain't. Because our people are so ignorant, it's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. We're the children, the true children of Israel, and our people are so confused to this day. The Willie Lynch syndrome and Stockholm syndrome is still in full effect. Saying stuff and lying. And I fear for a lot of you because you're supposed to be truth seekers. You're supposed to love the truth, especially coming from one of your brethren. But you love your own heart's way, and you want to be more a part of Mystery Babylon than you want to be a part of Yahuwah in the kingdom of Yisrael, the everlasting kingdom. But that's on you, and you're going to have to give an account for that. So with that, that's it. Peace be with you. Shalom.